Okay, we are live, 10/2/2024. In about half an hour, you'll get the archives from yesterday. We talked about the Vegas hoax-iversary. Lots going on. And as I said, I was going to sit out and watch Megalopolis, which I did. And before I went out, I sent a pre-review. So I wrote here, I'm heading out to see Francis Ford Coppola's Megalopolis. Upon my return, I'll review it and provide a Metascript breakdown. I noticed that when it reached the film festivals, there was a mention of a Russian satellite breaking up in space, necessitating sheltering in place of the astronauts. A Russian satellite falling to Earth is a component of Megalopolis. It corrected me to Metropolis, which is a different movie, but an interesting correction. A Russian satellite breaks up, creating debris in low Earth orbit. This was reported in late June. A Russian satellite in low Earth orbit broke up into 100 pieces. Trackable debris, briefly causing the ISS crew to take shelter. Then you have the image here. A Russian satellite hurling towards Earth. This is from the movie. There's a huge prop throughout the movie. They constantly refer to this thing, as we'll get to. But what I wrote here is that the ISS is a Tower of Babel, like a symbol of world unity. One language, you could say internet, one mission, the space program from Earth to the heavens. And when it falls, as it did in the movie ISS, which came out on 1/19, it represents the breaking apart of this world unity. And in the movie ISS, Russia and the United States are physically fighting on the space station for control of it. And the date 1/19 is something we often see regarding movies that have to do with the sky falling, like Donnie Darko. That release date is significant in itself. What's more, we've pointed this to the, of course, reverse 9/11, but Genesis 1:19. So you got Revelation 9/11, references to the abyss, which are strongly connected with 9/11 itself, but 11:9. Therefore its name was called Babel, because there was a Lord confused the language of the earth, and from there the Lord dispersed them over the face of all the earth. So the scattering, the breaking down of the communication lines, a huge storyline within Leave the World Behind, for example. There's more. Francis Ford Coppola's, and let me add this. You can see there's a string of events, a series, a sequence that all tell the same story. And the point is made in Megalopolis that an empire doesn't die all at once, but it takes time. And I would argue that the Titanic sinking is the metaphor of the West sinking, as are the Twin Towers sinking, as will be the ISS, quote, sinking or falling. That we're witnessing a drama metascripted across generations. Now, this all ties together. Megalopolis was delayed from its pre-9/11 conception because 9/11 stole all its thunder. A scene was removed from the script because it related to and would have been foreshadowing 9/11. What's more, this movie has also included within it footage from September 11th, 2001, filmed there in New York. And I can verify they do indeed have clips and some scenes from 9/11. It's from ScreenRant.com. Megalopolis may include actual footage of New York City on 9/11 as evidence of the project's extended development period. The footage was captured by Coppola's second unit team in 2001 as they filmed day-to-day life in New York to work things into the script for the movie. This kind of reminds me of James Cameron filming Terminator 2 about the evil cop, when George Holliday is filming James Cameron on the sidelines, and then he catches the scene of the evil cops beating Rodney King. We have these interesting examples of where they just happen to be at that place at that time. These metascriptors, they happen to be in relevant places. James Cameron at the site of the sunken Titanic on 9/11, and the layers connecting the narrative are there. We can go into the details, but with regard to this, they asked him if 9/11 is what stopped him from working on it in 2001, and he said, it made it pretty tough. A movie about the aspiration of utopia with New York as a main character, and then all of a sudden you couldn't write about New York without dealing with what just happened. The world was attacked, and I didn't know how to deal with that. So it wasn't really appropriate. And my previewing take on the movie is informed by the coverage surrounding it, the trailer, and how it ties into the meta-scripted news-bent reality. For example, the satellite blowing up as this movie hit the film festivals. The trailer has falling debris, and the narration describes the end of an empire. You have the Statue of Liberty in the shot, and it's reminiscent of the damaged Statue of Liberty from the post-nuke apocalypse Planet of the Apes, imagery of which was featured at the opening of the Paris Olympics. So it was reflecting a lot of what we had already been saying. So I wrote here, I suspect that Megalopolis is the West, the Tower of Babel. This film will foreshadow the next 9/11. This one scattering the one language, the internet, ending international cooperation, perhaps a new space-based warfare. In my projection here, it has to do with the imagery we're going to see, the types of planted messages. And so I'm going to go through my notes. I took quite a few. Okay, let's see if my Word has updated. I might have to open my laptop here for this. So while I get to my notes, and by the way, I was the only person like in the theater. Like sometimes I wonder if there really was a pandemic. And some of these theaters really try to entice people to come in by giving you big, nice recliners with tables. You could like lay down. It's like you're in bed. It's more comfortable than your home theater. That's what they're competing with. They're competing with the comfort of your home theater. Okay, so let's start with this. Whenever I watch one of these movies, what I first pay attention to are the trailers leading up to it. And that's because it's all part of the same frame of reference. They're all coming from the same place, and these things are concerted. Not a coincidence that Joker 2 comes out at the same time as Beetlejuice 2. We've gone into this at length. Let me see who else is here, and if you've seen the movie, let me know. Observing Realities here, Suzette says, I saw it last Friday. Joined by Greg R. Benton, AJ206, Ears Up, Psy Girl. Linda Curtis, Ted Stryker, Gematria 101, Frugal Snowbird. Piano and Dante says, greetings. Deprogrammed Truther says, song is awesome. Post a link if you have it. Oh yes, I'll see if I can find a video for it. That would be Warriors of the Plain. Joined by Armin Ree. Messianic Charlatan. Psy Girl says, I just got through working out to this classic tune from the 90s, if you believe they put a man on the moon. Yeah, I'll have to pull that up. I want to see the lyrics. And now it's safe to be a moon landing denialist. You just have to say, we had to do it to punk the Russians. You can take more pride in America psyoping Russia than you would have saying America beat Russia to the moon. And they accomplished this with the movie Fly Me to the Moon. They made it into a joke. Okay, let's continue. Buzzing Fret says, Psy Girl was great last night on Fakeologist. King Ravana, thank you for joining from D-Live. Quay says, can't wait to catch up on the last few days. Hope you're all well. Yeah, and also, if you subscribe to the newsletter at ips.monster, I sent out the 5-hour AutoHoax Con number 1, and we're already preparing for number 2. Psy Girl says, everyone raves about James Cameron or Christopher Nolan, but I grew up on Cecil B. DeMille, Hitchcock, Coppola. Well, this is Coppola. And, looking back, there were 2 movies that were cited as inspiration for Lee Harvey Oswald, Suddenly and Manchurian Candidate, both Frank Sinatra films. Both of these were reviewed by Lee Harvey Oswald, and both contain what you would consider to be predictive programming. The predictive programming game goes way back. Even the news commentators on the day of the Kennedy assassination were talking about previous failings of Secret Service. And on that day, 11/22/1963, interestingly enough, Stanley Kubrick was screening Dr. Strangelove. And again, if you've heard me say this before, I would argue that Stanley Kubrick directed the JFK assassination. He shot him, not Oswald. Oswald wasn't even a patsy. He's an actor portraying the role of a patsy. Nick Cruz, not a patsy. These mass shooters aren't patsies of the deep state, drugged up, MK Ultra Assassins? No, no. These are actors portraying all of the above in every instance. Drawn by Esteban, traveling home, he says. Lando Rock, Nicotramus. All right, we have reached our requisite. In fact, that was pretty quick. We're already past 60. So I'm going to go through my notes, and if anything interests you on this topic, feel free to call in and add to it. So the first thing I'm talking about, the trailers. The first trailer I see is one for the 35th anniversary of Back to the Future, and it had many examples in this trailer of Biff Tannen's face. And again, Biff Tannen is a predictive programming proxy for Donald Trump. So it's notable. And if you look at Biff Tannen, it looks like a cross between Trump and Elvis. Not a coincidence. Then they played a trailer for a movie called Smiles 2. I've never seen Smiles 1, but it's very Joker-ish. Joker 2, Smiles 2, the Joker smile. And the Joker smile is some kind of symbol in and of itself. It even ties into Brandon Lee and the Crow. We can get into this. It's all iconography and symbolism. I watched the trailer for Joker 2, and you have, this is interesting, Lady Gaga as Harlequin does the Travis Bickle headshot gesture. So she makes a gun out of her hand, points it at her temple, and pulls the trigger just like Travis Bickle did. But she does it to the Joker. And if you recall, the Joker is based on Taxi Driver. So that's a callback to Travis Bickle, the Robert De Niro character, who inspired the assassination attempt of Reagan and the shooting of James Brady, who died 33 years later on August the 4th. A death ruled a homicide 33 years after the fact. But she made that gesture, which is highly symbolic. Then, and I'm just talking about the trailer for Joker 2, you see Joker hammering a judge on the head with a hammer. That's right out of the third degree Masonic death resurrection ritual, the hammer to the head. And we're waiting for the hammer to the head of Hiram Biff Tannen, Trump. And after that happens, she says, Judgment Day. And then it cuts to 10-4. So this is all seeming to lead to 10-4, the release of Joker 2. But the fictional universe in which Batman Joker takes place has been superimposed onto mainstream news with every major psyop since the Joker shooter in 2012. 2013-ish. At that time, Christopher Nolan's movie Dark Knight Rising comes out. And ever since then, we've seen this. We saw it with the Boston bombing, with Joker Sarnev. We saw it with every Trump appearance. You know, he's on trial, 4/4/23. Joker 2's filmed outside. You have the Maxwell's Rello. Tons of Joker connections. We have the Robert De Niro outside the Trump courthouse, and he gets killed in the latest Joker. So these connections are there, and I'm just pointing them out. So this is highly significant that the movie comes out on 10-4. So now on to Megalopolis. It opens up on a tower, the top of a building, with pyramid designs all over it. And you have the main character, and my first impression when I see this guy, whose name is Caesar, so Caesar Catalina, my first impression, what is this? A dollar store Neo. This looks like Keanu Reeves. They ordered Neo on Wish, and they get this guy. And he's on top of this tower, which is a clock tower, and he's about to step off. And instantly, you see the clock, and it reminds me of Dark City. Dark City came out around the same time as The Matrix, and this movie has elements of both immediately from the outset. So my first thought again is this guy's Neo in The Matrix in some way. There's a mention of satellite falling. They say the die is cast, which has to do with crossing the Rubicon. Lots of allusions here. If you've seen Titus with Anthony Hopkins, then you'll understand this movie more, because a lot of it's just anachronistic, superimposing Rome over America, make Rome great again. It has this anachronistic nature to the whole thing, connecting it to Rome. Now it cuts to a controlled demolition scene by the Design Authority. So the Design Authority are dressed in black, and they have these black-rimmed hats, like Lodge Master hats. I refer to these as like Saturnian. But the Design Authority is downtown New York doing a controlled demolition. It looks like the directors of 9/11. And the Design Authority, I think, in this movie represent the metascriptors. That's what it would seem like they represent. But what's more, they look like the strangers from Dark City, dressed in black, black rimmed hats. And the strangers in Dark City controlled time. They could shut down time and rearrange society. And that's what the main character does. He stops time. And this has to do with what we've been talking about, how history is being controlled. We say fake news all day. Yeah, they fake news. That's a simulation. That's a fake event. Well, no, they're faking history. This is time control. The conquerors write history, and they're writing it day by day. It's an ongoing process. So they are the strangers. They are the design authority. And everything ties into Saturn, the black rimmed hats, and the clock. So I'm taking note of this, and as the movie goes on, it's even more explicit. Now, visually, it's very creative and artistic, but it's also, the movie's just a huge mess. I mean, hours of being inundated with this stuff, and most of it is esoteric, symbolic, and it's meant to be decoded. It's like a cubic, I was going to say a Kubrick's cube, like a Rubik's cube. It's definitely a puzzle, but it's frame by frame, one of these movies that needs to be decoded. But again, I initially said this guy looks like Neo, and as you'll see as this goes on, it's reiterated by other facts. So I suspect design authority is the PSYOP department, the metascriptors that write our fake news that becomes our history day by day. Next scene, Lawrence Fishburne, Morpheus. So Morpheus is Caesar's driver, and he's driving him around, and he's talking about time. So Caesar, Catalina, CC 33, pretty obvious there. And he's saying the empire dies over time, making the case that it doesn't end all at once. It ends over time when people cease believing in it. And he's talking about time in the way that Morpheus talked about the Matrix. He's driving him around in the rain, greenish background. So I'm like looking at this as, wait, this is like Neo in the Matrix all over again. This is a recreation of aspects of the Matrix on purpose. And he answers a corded phone. The ringing phone is one of the main features, the defining characteristics of the Matrix. The phone rings, and you answer it. This is a huge part of the Matrix. So these are all kinds of Matrix callbacks. And as we talked about the other day, Neo has a passport with 9/11 on it, 9/11/01. And on 9/11/01, passports are how we got the story about who did it, because the passports survived the burning jet fuel. Now, this film was halted because of 9/11, so that's also significant. Next note here, we're introduced to Caesar's competitor, the mayor, who whispers in his ear. And this scene, where you're looking at this man whispering in the other man's ear up close, it actually reminded me, for a few reasons, of the scene where George Bush is in the classroom on 9/11 and the Secret Service is whispering in his ear, and the photographer who photographed that image photographed the bullet whizzing by Trump's ear. So these are just things that I think might be significant. Also, this mayor has it in for Caesar, their competitors, and it is reminiscent in many ways of the Chicago mayor, who is an Obama stand-in, an Obama predictive programming proxy. And what I mean by this is that you have an actor in a role who portrays somebody on the world stage. So in A Man in Full, the Chicago mayor is a predictive programming proxy for Obama, and he has it in for Charlie Coker, who represents Trump. I see a similar dynamic here, this dynamic between the mayor and Caesar. Caesar falls in love with a woman in red. She's introduced all dressed in red, and this seems to be a callback to the Matrix again, where the woman in red represents distraction. And I kind of get the idea, watching it at this point, that we're looking at a version of Neo who didn't leave the Matrix, kind of an evil in a way, falling in love with the woman in red who symbolizes the Matrix, the illusion, the distraction. She compares herself to the Statue of Liberty, and he keeps talking about time, and there's so many references to time and time control being inferred here. They have the headlines of the Russian satellite that say "heads up," and I took this "heads up" to be some kind of a reference to the Trump head wound thing. And interestingly, later in the movie. And by the way, spoiler alerts. This is spoiler alerts for the world stage. It did indeed foreshadow a headshot, which we'll get to. Many scenes show the Caesar with a skyscraper behind him. Big needly point. It's a reoccurring theme. Lots of rainy sequences with green lighting when Morpheus and him are talking about time. And a lot of it's very cryptic. He says time stops for nobody, and yet Caesar's there and he can stop time. So a lot of it's cryptic. I'm trying to find meanings, like what is the nobodies? What are the nobodies? Is there a reference to nobody that you can find somewhere? I think I might have some leads here. Now, at one point, Caesar is on top of a tower, standing on the face of a clock, and he pulls out a hexagonal lens through which he examines the world below. So the hexagon and the hexagram and the cube and the clock face are all relevant to Saturn. And you could just say the matrix itself, the time-space matrix, the realm of matter. And he says this thing again and again: leap into the unknown, prove you're free. Leaps in the unknown prove that we are free. And this is repeated again and again. And this is reminiscent of Neo in the Matrix, who has to escape the Matrix by jumping off a building, as this individual is doing at the beginning. The jumping off the building is an allusion to the fool in the Tarot, who's about to step off a cliff. The fool is the beginning of the journey. Now, there's foreshadowing in the movie. He's injured in a fight, and they have a mugshot or a picture of him, and the right eye in the picture is torn. So this is foreshadowing. I was just taking note of it. The newspapers announced that the Russian satellite's going to fall in Labrador, which is a dog reference, highly significant. But instead, it hits New York. You see the Statue of Liberty as the space junk falls, and it creates a 9/11-like scene.
Thank you for feeding the Kraken, fill the blank. The IPS appreciates the support.
Yes, thank you very much, fill the blank. We could not exist without your support, everyone here. Let's see, Kevin Mooring says Neo's birthday is 11/19/83. Fascinating. Okay, moving on here, because there's just a few more notes. So here's the thing. The satellite's going down. It's supposed to land in Labrador. It hits New York, and it creates, and this is intentional, they made it ground zero. They created a ground zero scene. It's unmistakable visually. They recreated 9/11. This is why he couldn't do the movie 24 years ago. This is why it had to be done later. But I think it's highly significant, too, that they waited. I think this is meant to tie in to the space 9/11. So I alluded to how it goes Titanic, Twin Towers, and then ISS. That's the West sinking. That's the Tower of Babel falling. And the tie-ins are there. The sinking of the Titanic was foreshadowed in the movie. The sinking of the Titanic was foreshadowed in a book, interestingly. But the movie by James Cameron had some visual depictions of the Twin Towers sinking in the form of the splitting of the hull of the Titanic itself. So then on 9/11, he's at the site of the sunken Titanic, further solidifying, cementing this connection between the metaphor of the sinking Titanic and the sinking of the World Trade Tower. And this metaphor further now will be extended to the space station, as you'll see. So it's highly significant that satellites are falling, Russian satellites falling on New York, creating this ground zero 9/11 scene. You see the Statue of Liberty in the background. So it makes a 9/11 connection to the falling of the space infrastructure, or the foreshadowing for the ISS falling. They're saying Russian satellite, but I think it actually foreshadows a dissolution of unity. Now, there's this cryptic reference where the mayor says, "I'll hear from you in 3 days." So I took that to mean there's going to be some kind of Christ reference. He dies and 3 days later comes back. And again, Caesar, Catalina, CC33, Christ reference. Then he's shot in the right eye, in the side of the face, as we were expecting. And then he has this miraculous recovery. So again, before he's shot, the person who would be connected to the assassination says, "See you in 3 days." It just seemed like a bit of foreshadowing. They make reference to Megalon and, of course, make Rome great again. And now that I'm thinking about it, Megalon probably means Babylon. Like you might as well say Magalon. And I say this because Make America Great Again, with the scarlet hat across the brow, is clearly a reference to Revelation 17's depiction of the whore of Babylon, who says Babylon the Fallen. Well, Make America Great Again, replace America with Babylon. Make Babylon great again. Babylon is fallen. Scarlet hat across the brow. So I think it's pretty safe to say that Megalopolis is also, again, a reference to America as Babylon. It gets cryptic. After his eye injury, he speaks of destruction and creation while seated by two twin pillars, these pillars. He removes the bandage, and there is this scene where it's almost like the woman in front of him genuflects and worships him, and gold rays come out of his eye. Next scene, they're celebrating Saturnalia. And Saturnalia, celebration of Saturn, is Christmas. So this is where it gets more interesting, because we just had the head wound thing. And who talks about this head wound? And we talk about the predictive programming for it and its association with Trump. But we often get Jurassic Liars calls in and talks about this. But he also talks about it in conjunction with Elvis, and Elvis somehow being Satan or a representation of the Antichrist, etc. Well, in this movie, after this dramatic scene of the shooting and assassination attempt and his resurrection, then you're at this Saturnalia party, and there's an aged Elvis Presley, and he's singing America the Beautiful. So Saturn, again, time, Kronos, there's mentions of Kronos by name in this, but Elvis is singing America the Beautiful, and America the Beautiful was performed at Trump's inauguration, if you recall. January 17th, 2020, Mormon Tabernacle Choir, America the Beautiful. Then you start seeing signs, Make Rome Great Again. You have rioters who are just like Nazi MAGA caricatures. Caesar appears. Caesar's alive, they cry. He addresses the world. His eye's been miraculously healed. And he gives this speech about time, consciousness, and courage. And from the beginning, he had been making the claim, his whole perspective is that civilization has been humanity's downfall, that we need to end civilization. We need to start something new. And that what allowed mankind to evolve, in his view, and he was having this debate with his nemesis, is our friendliness, our ability to cooperate, that we, through our better natures, have ascended. And the other individual said, no, it was our brutality, our aggression. So they have these two different views, idealism versus this very cynical idea, so what are we? What defines us? So the mayor is his persecutor, his nemesis, and soon-to-be father-in-law, I think. And he maintains that, no, it was brutality and aggression as our defining traits that allowed us to dominate the world. So they present this dichotomy of brutality, or the brute force, versus the mind. And Neo here, from the Neo, or Caesar, represents the mind. He's the idealist. Now, there's some aspects to it here that it ties into the astrotheological. So the next part, you have the Saturnalia celebration, which means Christmas. What follows Christmas? New Year's. So we're at the New Year's celebration, and Caesar, the mayor's daughter, and wife, and of course Caesar's with the daughter, they're all in the same scene, standing between two pillars in Times Square. So here they are in Times Square, and I'm looking up and I see the light, the ball, which represents Sirius. So every year at midnight, New Year's evening, the dog star reaches its highest point and then it falls. So you're actually counting down to this ritual involving the God Star of the New Age. The Masonic lodges all orient and have this veneration for the dog star, the blazing star, and they have this emblem of it in their lodges. So it's highly significant that here they are with the newborn child who was born on Saturnalia. You have a Christmas child, so that's a Christ reference, in Times Square between two pillars, and then Sirius descends. And as the ball starts dropping, the camera blacks out everything and only spotlights the child. and they talk about how she represents the future, which to me sounds like the merging of these two families. The one side that represents brutality, the other side the mind, and this child represents this unification. But it's a Saturnalia / Sirius reference here. And this is all following the chaos that followed in the wake of the satellite falling. And then it goes into this scene where it has like this pledge to humanity, where they rewrote the Pledge of Allegiance, but it's the pledge to humanity, and it's a pledge for one Earth. So the movie, the message at the end of the movie is about this moving past our old concepts of civilization, breaking away from everything that defined our past and building this new utopia. And that's what Megalopolis is. But if you look at the subtext here, it's about this Masonic one world order, this one world religion. It's about this new unity that happens in the wake of the fall of Babylon. So that would be the end of my notes that I took. But I really have to point out that the Neo Morpheus Matrix stuff is probably one of the more perplexing aspects to it, because this there's some intentionality here, and it adds a whole new layer of meaning. Let me go ahead and look that up, by the way. I want to see if Neo made it into any reviews. Has anybody compared this actor to Neo? Because having Lawrence Fishburne, and he does the narration on the trailer, easily one of the best voice over artists out there. Haven't seen anything yet, but I'll be looking. Let me see what we have here in the comments. Kevin Moring says, can't wait for the breakdown of Joker 2. Yeah, we're going to watch that. We're going to watch that on the 4th. The day it comes out, I'll just go right straight over to the theater. Greetings from Holland, says Marcel. Thank you. Girl says, whole generations were programmed by TV and movies. It shapes our perceptions, dreams, and expectations. Oh, yeah. There's post-hypnotic suggestion, but there's also just the perception management, the frames of reference, the narratives they fill our minds with. 100%. Shannon Jones says, Autohoax Con is outstanding. Tim, great job. Thank you. Autohoax Con number 2 should be even as interesting, if not more. Suzette says, Tim's supposed to be sharing a screen. No, I don't have any screen caps on the movie. I'm just going through my notes in my notebook. Kevin Moring says, remember when Rage Against the Machine was cool? Not so much these days. They probably still are. Depends on what side of the political spectrum you're on. Dwayne Aubith said, the veneration of Sirius dates back to ancient Egypt. Yeah, and it goes on to the present day. The fact that New Year's is based on Sirius, the dog star, itself is indicative of how the masses are not aware. It's been occulted. Phil LeBlanc said, so it's the Zeitgeist sequel. Yeah, this movie has some kind of almost like a happy ending, but it has this projection for the future that we do have this collapse, this fall, this calamity, and we have the one. This guy controls time. He's like Neo in the Matrix. And I think that we're looking at some conflation between a few characters here. Like the head wound thing, the miraculous healing, and then he addresses the world and offers the one world pledge, the pledge to humanity. You know, to me, it is almost like the idea that the West has to fall so we can have some kind of unity across the board. Armin Reese says the guy on the screen looks more like Spock. Well, if you watch throughout the movie, between the interactions between him and Fishburne, it's like Morpheus all over again. But instead of talking about this is the Matrix, the world that pulled over your eyes, he's all about time and time control, and time stops for no one. Girl says, how many Jokers have we lived through? We had James Holmes, Joker Sarnoff. Then we have this last shooter, Joker Connections. I would say that the first shooter was connected more to the Riddler. We had Frank James, a Riddler connection. But yeah, we've been inundated with these types. Is it worth watching? Good question. Good question. It's long, it's creative, it's a fable. If you like Titus, you'll probably like this. But I'm watching it with a notebook in hand, detail for detail. It's not an easy watch as far as it's not like as, in my opinion, it's not as enjoyable as something like The Penguin. Like it's not, I don't even know if it's meant to be. It's kind of artsy. It's like Kubrick's films. I watch Kubrick films. I don't actually like them, but I know it needs to be decoded. Leave the World Behind was much the same way. Like, I think this is more of a data dump than a movie. I think the purpose of this movie has more to do with the meta script than anything else. Kevin Mooring says Joker 2 on Thursday comes out. He kills the judge with a hammer. Yeah, Beetlejuice. I did look at Beetlejuice 2, and it was a more family friendly version of the first one. I didn't see anything wrong with it, but the thing is, Beetlejuice 2 comes out alongside Joker 2, and we have the second shooter. And the connections with Joker and the shooters, the Joker and the opposition to Trump has been made very clear over a lot of various psyops. But Beetlejuice is played by Michael Keaton, so you have the Batman Joker connection there. He's got the green hair like the Joker, and it's also a sequel, the Second Coming thing, which is highly significant in this bigger narrative. In Beetlejuice, you have in the netherworld a dead Donald Trump. So let me pull that up. Dead Donald Trump in Beetlejuice. If they didn't pull my, I think I might have had to. I might have pulled it. Yeah, you know, I pulled the video. I didn't trust it being up there, but I do have an image of the dead Donald Trump in Beetlejuice on my blog. Here he is. This was an article I put out. Let's not minimize the significance of predictive programming. So Beetlejuice 2 has a connection to Joker 2. The Joker 2 also applies to the second shooter, who laughed in court like the Joker, laughed while he was being arrested, and had the blue and yellow hair. Blue and yellow also gives you green. He, like the previous shooter, Thomas Crooks, is a caricature. Thomas Crooks was called an enigma multiple times. Enigma is the name of the Riddler, and he looks like a young Riddler. And here's the scene where the Trump-esque character, who has an American flag lapel pin just where Trump does and has Trump's hair, walks by and seems to have a hole in the side of his head. So not even Beetlejuice. Yeah, he wears the black and white. And let me compare this. If you look at the Hopi Kachina doll, the Joker, it has the same outfit as Beetlejuice, the black and white stripes. So we're talking about archetypes and symbols all hitting the collective psyche at once. Concerted messaging. Predictive programming is not anomalous. They make sure everybody gets it. So everyone who went and saw Beetlejuice 2, you saw the Joker archetype, the green hair, the black and white stripes. You saw the dead Trump. Like you process that at some subconscious level. Then Joker 2, of course. Then Batman is encoded in the Beetlejuice character. The sequel thing, the 2, also has some other meaning as well. Like Donald Trump going to court on 4/4, and Joker 2 is being filmed outside, and people think the mob is there for Trump, but they're there for the Joker. And that 4/4 was the 55th anniversary of MLK's death. It was Holy Week. Trump had been compared to Christ that week anyway, which just sounds weird now thinking about it. But that was also Heath Ledger's 44th birthday. And the 4 is a cross. So you have this second coming or double cross symbolism also intrinsic to this. Then you have the name Phoenix. Phoenix is another symbol of Christ. Phoenix also represents the rebirth, second coming. So Joker 2 has those connotations. And if you dig into the character Joaquin Phoenix, there are many, many examples where he has Christ typography all over his character. I pointed this out the other day, even 8mm. He works at an adult video store, and yet he gets put on a St. Andrew's cross. He's like literally crucified and killed. It's a reoccurring thing with him. So here's an image from the movie. The right eye of this Neo-esque character. Far right wing Nazis order a hit on Caesar Catalina in Megalopolis. Leo Pirate pointed this out, noting that both attempts of Trump have come from ostensible right-wingers. But it's 100% right eye. Armin Reese says, maybe I'll watch Joker 2 tomorrow. It's out here in Portugal. Yeah, I would. Joker was based on, in large part, Taxi Driver. And this connection to Robert De Niro is strong for a few reasons. Because not only is Robert De Niro outside the courthouse railing against Trump inside, but in Machete 2010, he portrayed a senator delivering a xenophobic speech that gets shot while he's speaking, foreshadowing Trump. Then he's also killed in Joker by the Joker in a role based on a character he played. You know, Joker was based on Travis Bickle. So you have the presidential assassination theme, Travis Bickle inspiring a, quote, real assassination attempt, and Travis Bickle's iconic image, and this is Robert De Niro, has the gun, the hand as a gun, pointed to his head. And that gesture is repeated in the trailer for Joker 2 by Lady Gaga, which again links Travis Bickle to the Joker, to the attempted assassination of Reagan, to the body of predictive programming that involves De Niro with this Trump assassination psyop. This stuff all takes place in the same fictional universe, that's for sure, but the Joker-Batman connections to everything right now are undeniable. All right, let's see here. So those were my notes. I'm going to probably write a more extensive review when I've had some time to think about it. But the main thing I took away from it were the connections to 9/11, Neo in the Matrix, and Dark City. I mean, there's the obvious stuff, the connections, I think, with Titus, stylistic connections. But for the most part, I think it has to do with the design authority, and the design authority being mass media's authors, the authors of our history. And I think it's worth noting here that, you know, we could talk about fake news, psyops, but the end result is the faking of history. And if you're faking history, what are you controlling? You're controlling time. So at the very beginning, when they show the design authority doing this demolition downtown, it was also where they demonstrated the ability to stop time. In other words, they stop time, they control time, but if you think about it, the meta scriptures today control time in this way as well. You have people who don't exist, who now exist, because they were written into a script and somebody fills that role. We have characters that are just pure constructs. It may as well be time travelers. If you're a crisis actor, you didn't exist, now you do, because you're on TV. Kevin Mooring says, you're right, he's the chosen one. Yes. So there's some significance here to Neo as this savior. And if you remember, Neo dies in the movie, The Matrix, for 72 seconds, which symbolizes 3 days before the resurrection by Trinity. You know, Trinity's the other connection here. She kisses him, he wakes up. But the 72 seconds corresponds to 72 hours. When he's told, I'll see you in 3 days, and then he gets his head wound and he comes back. I don't know if it was 3 days chronologically, but it's certainly a clue there that we're looking at some more Christ typology superimposed over this. There's another character in this whose name is Crassius, Hamilton Crassius, who I also think might be a predictive programming proxy for Trump. The actor is Adam Driver. Okay, let's look up Adam Driver. See, you see what I mean? I would argue that this guy's kind of Keanu Reeves-ish. That my first impression was this guy had some, he was like a Keanu Reeves. And then my second impression of him, he's hanging out with Morpheus, and I'm like, yeah, I'm doubling down on it. This guy is 100% based on Keanu Reeves. And this is done for the purposes of synchronizing narratives, connecting 9/11 to this movie, connecting 2001 to 2024, and preparing us for the space 9/11, the third installment of this movie. Titanic sinking was 1, Twin Towers sinking was 2, ISS falling is 3. The Lawrence Fishburne thing, it's almost comical because they're driving around in a car and he answers a phone with a cord and it's raining. Like in the Matrix, it's always raining and you always have that greenish hue in the background. And they're having these deep philosophical discussions about time. And it's Morpheus that I'm hearing. Yeah, let me open up the phones. And then, yeah, let's look at his birthday. That's what I was going to do. I was going to look, let's find his birthday. Adam Driver, born, 11/19. Okay. 1119, 1983. So he's 40. Yeah, that stands out. 11/19. Very 9/11-y, as we would say. He had a role in Lincoln. Okay. Assassination, head wound movie. We'll look into this. Interesting character. Let me know. I'm going to open up my phones right now. So if you want to call in. I saw Jurassic Liar said, I have something on the 72 seconds connection. Conscious Reality says, also Pete Rose was announced dead again. Had he previously been announced dead? Of course, the name Rose. Oh, okay, Adam Driver was the lead in White Noise. Are you kidding me? I didn't recognize him. Okay, White Noise is also a very interesting film. I actually put it out there that this movie, White Noise, okay, that's him. That it was sort of a nightmarish, satirical version of National Lampoon's Family Vacation. And that they were taking this idea of this perfect family, not so perfect, but an American family driving across the country. I'm going to see if I can find a good comparison here. So here's the family from White Noise. White Noise has the toxic airborne event. It foreshadows what happened in East Palestine, Ohio. Extras in this movie who participated in the simulated derailment and toxic airborne event had to participate in the, quote, real thing when it happened in East Palestine. But now let's compare the two. Because one of the things they were doing with this movie was saying that essentially the way we live is toxic and it can't last. You can't just drive across the country anymore. So they were kind of destroying this almost idyllic, iconic version of America. And Ohio, of course, heart of it all. The heartland, this idea of things that are considered to be characteristic of Americans and American families. The nuclear family itself. And this, of course, followed by Barbie feminism. But if you look at the two, there were some deliberate connections made between the Griswolds and the White Noise family. Again, it's something I thought of a satire. But it's been brought up again and again because the place where this happened, East Palestine, Ohio, is 42 miles from where Trump was shot. And Trump is going to be back there in 3 days. Okay, let's see here, going through your comments. Someone says, Coming to America 2. You know, Coming to America 2 was 33 years after the first one. One of the stories is The Returning King. Marcel says 72, the number of demons sealed away by King Solomon. Yeah, the goetic spirits. Supposedly, There are these 72 spirits that you can evoke or summon. The magic of King Solomon is kind of built into a lot of New Age stuff, the format for these evocations. Has anybody else watched Megalopolis? So I can't really give you a cohesive explanation for what it is other than, in broad strokes, you have these two competing visions for the future. One represents the past civilization, that man had to be civilized and the process was brutal. And then you have this world leader emerging who has this vision of, this more idealized vision of man, that it's our higher mind, our higher thinking, and our ability to be empathic and friendly that allowed us to evolve. And the Russian satellite falling, creating a 9/11 in New York, and then the chaos that ensues is followed by this pledge for humanity to unite as one. And the symbol of this new unity is the child that he sires with the daughter of his opposition. So they unite over this child, and this is on New Year's in Times Square, Christmas child Saturnalia, as Sirius falls. So it's very esoteric. It's throughout the film. It contains this stuff. The right eye wound thing in proximity to Elvis singing America the Beautiful. Surreal. Absolutely surreal. Oh, yeah, the number, let me put it on the screen. It's 505-510-4226. Again, if you have any other information about this movie or any kind of points to make on it, you're welcome to call in. I watch movies so you don't have to. Plain Dakota says they ripped off the title Metropolis. I kind of thought so too. Because my spell check kept changing it from Megalopolis to the 1927 German expressionist sci-fi film by Fritz Lang, Metropolis. And this is why it's going to take some time to decode it. I'm pretty sure that Megalopolis has the same meaning. I'm sure there's some overlap between these two. And I'm waiting to see what critics have to say about this movie. Here's a screenshot where he's on top of a clock, on top of a tower, looking at the world through a hexagon. The hexagon, of course, has a two-dimensional cube. So he's looking at it through the cube. So the cube, the hexagon, Saturn, time control, the Matrix, it's all tied into this. Same with all the Dark City stuff. But the movie is primarily about the Saturnian controllers of this place. Oh, nice. Lady Gaga says Psy Girl sang the national anthem at Biden's inaugural. I was inspired. Now that's notable. So the Mormon Tabernacle Choir sang America the Beautiful at Trump's, and then she sings at Biden's. Elvis sings America the Beautiful at Saturnalia, which is another connection between Elvis and Saturn, or L, which is another connection as well that has often been made. So just for background, L is the name of God, but Saturn, Elvis, there's definitely something to that. Megalopolis. Yeah, I think they made the point in this too. Like, make Rome great again. I think Maga means make Babylon great again. And I think it's a reference to Revelation 17. Okay, I want to go through my other notes as well. The Russian satellite thing was concurrent programming, by the way. And the movie did contain scenes from September the 11th, 2001. Several scenes. Smoky, New York, some memorial sites, or rather missing persons. They had these street corners with pictures. He took some shots from 9/11 and put it in this montage. And the montage is where Neo, or Caesar, is telling the world that look what civilization has brought us. Look at the oppression, etc. So the movie was basically suggesting that the idealists have it right, that we need to burn down what is, build back better, that we're being held back by the past. So it has this revolutionary theme, but it ends with the pledge of allegiance to humanity and a one singular united world. I've been seeing a lot of propaganda like this. I consider this to be atrocity propaganda. Breaking Hurricane Helene update. 6 children were found. Their parents are dead. The children were raped by illegal aliens. This is on you, Joe Biden. This is exactly just a quote. There's like lots of these going around. This is on you, Joe Biden, Mayorkas, and Kamala Harris. 1 million views. 1 million views, no evidence. This is just like Maui. 1,600 kids were vaporized by direct energy weapons, and yet Kamala Harris and Joe Biden say nothing. My dead kids. So I'm looking at these 6 stories, this atrocity propaganda clickbait, where people are getting millions of views by straight up lying on top of an existing tragedy. This is sick. But people in here are sharing it, they're praying, and they're angry. These are the same people who think the Hells Angels are on the way to stop the Venezuelans from taking over the gang turf of Crips and Bloods in Aurora, and the same people who think the longshoremen are tired of hearing children and people scratching at the walls of the shipping containers, and the longshoremen are on strike until all the trafficked women and children are released. It's a repeat of the tunnel children from 2015-2016. So this event is being hyped. Countless families have lost everything. This is only one city. Yes, there does seem to be a great deal of devastation. But on top of it, you have many patriot QAnon truthers adding on to it. Help these children, dear God, this person tweets. One person said this might be fake. Another person said, I'm waiting for a source on this. Yeah, it's not going to happen. Didn't happen, says Agent Self. OMG, is this verified? Doesn't matter if it's verified. 1 million people have shared it. This is auto belief run amok. They will believe anything. What a grift. Kevin Mooring says 33 days until election. Yes, 33 days until civil war begins, but you'll be at home, locked down for some reason. I'm looking forward to 11/3. In fact, I would like it if they could just bring us some closure here. Let's just do the 8/4 head wound on 10/4, because 10 is October 8, it still counts. And let's do the nuking of Seattle on 11/3, which is supported by voluminous predictive programming examples. It's pretty clear you could make the case. And, you know, Trump was shot on 7/13. 113 days would be 11/3. And there's a movie called How It Ends that came out on 7/13 that has Seattle being blown up. 113 minutes long. So we've looked at a lot of these connections before between 7/13 and these blackouts in New York, these historic blackouts separated by 42 years to the day. We've made connections with the blackout dates, 7/13 and 11/3. But that would certainly make the election a little more interesting, or it would stop it. Plain Dakota says Trump sent the hurricane to flood the tunnels. Girl says Maui was definitely targeted arson, low tech, high tech, or any tech. I would argue that Maui was a movie set. That there may have been some controlled burns, possibly, but I don't think it was an attack. I think it was completely staged. So the left wing says, oh, it was climate change. I even heard Molly Jong-Fast, left-wing podcaster, saying, I feel bad for Maui for my contribution to it. For her contribution to climate change, for her 45, 50 years on Earth, she feels like she's partially responsible for Maui because her carbon footprint. So she apologized to the victims of Maui for climate change. But then on the other side of the political horseshoe, they say, oh, this was done by the deep state. This was definitely direct energy weapons. This was an attack. It was a land grab attack. And I'm wondering, was it even anything more than a movie? Was it all? I saw the walkthroughs. Could have been AVR. Those burnt cars looked like prop cars. None of it looked real to me. Till says, Tim, did you see the clip where Trump was endorsing the purge? He said how things would change if we had 1 hour. I talked about this yesterday because it really stood out to me that for years, Laura Loomer has been lurking in Trump's shadow, hyping up all these conspiracies about everything. You know, she's been a big conspiracy pusher. She pushed the cat thing. They're going to eat our cats on Trump. She's been blamed for that stuff. So it's interesting that she's so close to him. And for the longest time, she's been compared to one of the villains from The Purge. They've compared her to The Purge. She looks like one of the bad guys. And, you know, people say it's to be cruel because of her plastic surgery. Well, now I'm starting to wonder if she even has plastic surgery, if it's not just a mask. Because now here she is in Trump's shadow and he's invoking the purge. But if you look back, this is from 2017. Jared Kushner hired the purge publicist, an expert in marketing dystopia, to run Trump's re-election campaign. Keep America Great comes from the purge. The PR chief behind the purge was just hired at the White House. Kushner hires horror film publicist to run PR for Keep America Great. And here's what Trump said the other day. As reported by Sebastian Smith, AFP Washington desk chief, Trump in Erie, Pennsylvania says, in the U.S., the police aren't allowed to do their job to stop crime. You need one really violent day, one rough hour, real rough. Word gets out, it would end immediately. So a number of people had compared this to the purge. Now, let's look at the purge, and I'll show you why I say, okay, look. Who comes to mind when you see the purge? Yes, the person who's a bad influence on Trump, who's giving Trump really bad ideas. So now let's look at Laura Loomer. And again, I am suggesting here that she's wearing a mask. That this is beyond coincidence. And this is not us being cruel. She's a nasty troll, one of the worst on the internet. But the fact that she's been compared to the purge is not cruelty, it's predictive programming. It was to foreshadow her connection with the radicalization of Trump and his policies. So this is not a new connection. But the fact that this is now connected to Trump literally talking. Let me just bring up some recent headlines. Like, here's one. Laura Loomer has been traveling with Trump for the past week, and there are a number of hit pieces on her. Trump allies worry about his ties to activist Laura Loomer, the far-right agitator. He called her a free spirit. Again, Loomer, purge, Trump, not a new story, but now he's just made it real. And then you go back to Keep America Great again, it's all there. Sorry, we just got our audio cut off for a second. Joined by Howard Boyd, says, good evening, Timmy. Great work, buddy. I've been with your work since 2020. Thank you for joining. Till says, society would vote for a purge 100%. A purge of what, though? I think they would. They already have it in some places, it seems like. Conscious Reality says, Tim, why were they painting their rooftops blue but nothing else? You know, I think that's truth or bait. I'm really on this, I think, angle here where any one of these psyops has to be agreed upon by both sides, that they're both agreeing not to reveal it, but I think they have to provide alternate views of things. So the left thinks the fires are out of the ordinary, caused by climate change. And the right will have to say it's out of the ordinary, caused by some super secret technology like direct energy weapons. And so the blue roofs might just be to build into that narrative. Mountain Dew, Maui Blast came out at the same time. So these are stories that are planned long in advance, and I think these are all details that build into it. So I'm going to do a web search. Maui fires are due not just to climate change, but it's a compound disaster. Is climate change to blame? The climate crisis and colonialism destroyed Maui. Lessons from Maui wildfires worsened by climate change. And this is a major talking point. But then you also have the right-wing version. Directed energy weapons and other claims go viral. A video purported to show a laser beam igniting Maui wildfires. Video claims to show direct energy weapons. Conspiracy theorists think the government used lasers in Maui. So that's the conspiratorial view. I don't think it's true. I just reject it because it's mainstream alt media. Also, let's point out too that the police chief in Maui was the police chief for Vegas. The worst mass shooting in American history, 10/1/2017. So these connections all suggest we're looking at a psyop and a movie set. And in order to make it believable, they have to provide, quote, evidence that it was done by direct energy weapons. So they show you these cars that are burned out in such a way that that can't be natural. So you're left with what? If you assume the basic reality, then you're left with MSM plus explanations. The media shows us a burnt car, that's real. The fires couldn't do it, therefore, directed energy weapons. That's MSM plus. The skeptical view would say, I don't even know for sure that these aren't prop cars. So before ruling in super high-tech weaponry that we've never heard of, we need to first rule out the possibility of fakery. And does the evidence support it being real? And given that we were told by many, many crisis actors on TikTok that 1,500 kids were vaporized and we have no evidence for it, I'm under the impression the whole thing was fake. Diana South says, green screen, blue screen. We all scream for fake dead kids. Yes, exactly. Dwayne Auberth. The same fallacies that truthers used to believe that DEWs were used on 9/11. Exactly. So truthers look at the screen and they say there's no way planes and jet fuel could do that. So they dig deeper. In order for this to be true, there must be something else, a plus. Let's add in something. Direct energy weapons, that explains it. Tactical nukes, that explains it. So you have these alternative explanations to make sense of the lie. That's MSM plus deeper in the box. MSM minus is that couldn't have happened, but I don't believe what I see on the screen if it's not supported by evidence. I have to question, were there even planes? It's a level of skepticism that truthers don't engage with. Conscious Reality says blue could be Masonic blue with the red flame. Yes, the colors are obviously in every instance highly significant. And if you recall, after the Maui fires, they sprayed soil tackifier, which was pink. So the areas that got burned turned pink. This connects to Barbieheimer. Barbieheimer was a combination of Barbie and Oppenheimer, and this ties into symbolically Babylon, which is Barbie, and the beast. The beast is Godzilla. Godzilla is a metaphor for the nuke. So you could look at Barbieheimer as Babylon beast, the beast from the sea. These connections are highly significant because the beast is symbolized by white and the goddess, or Babylon, by red. Christ Magdalene, Babylon beast, this is the pairing. I talked about this with the Super Bowl with Rihanna in red, representing the goddess, Magdalene, Isis, surrounded by dancers in white, all male, representing the god. This is the same as the last Super Bowl, Alicia Keys in that red dress, dancing with Usher, dressed in white. Again, the male, white, female, red. He's got the phoenix, another Christ symbol, on his white suit. So the red and the white symbolize the pairing of the god and goddess. Babylon and Beast is the newest iteration of this. What happens when you mix red and white? You get pink. This is why you had, I could point to this latest shooter and the symbolism there with his red cross shirt and his pink shirt. But the symbolism here ties into Godzilla, who turns pink in the new movie when he blasts his laser out. Pink has some connections to the whole nuclear bomb narrative. You got the blast, and the color pink has been attached to that story. And of course, the thing with the soil tackifier is you're looking at the islands. And this was in the summer, of course, of Barbie being out. We talked about the origin of Bombshell, because she was a bombshell. In fact, Margot Robbie from Barbie played in Bombshell. Bombshell is a phrase like that came up when Bikini Island had its tests. They were doing these nuclear tests, Bikini Island, and they started referring to women in bikinis as, quote, bombshells. So we have the island being attacked by Godzilla, direct energy weapons, and then it's covered in pink soil tackifier. There's some kind of tie-ins here that we were noting, mostly having to do with the islands and the attack by some strange weapon. It may as well have been Godzilla. But I'm just pointing out how the fictional universes of Godzilla and Barbie were superimposed over that summer. Just like right now we're dealing with the Joker. Joker 2 and Batman have been superimposed over our news cycles. In 2022 midterm elections, slogan was flood the polls. 2022, flood the polls. Midterm elections. 2022, Batman comes out, and the Riddler's terrorist army breaks a dam and floods the polls, stops the election. So how is it the GOP slogan has a corresponding element in the Batman movie? Flood the zone, flood the polls, and then you have the literal flooding of the polls in the movie, which was Election Day 11/5, and then 11/6 Gotham's underwater. So here we are coming up on the 11/5 election. Dwayne Opit says popular idioms is another way the programmers alter mass consciousness. Yeah, absolutely. We're looking at perception management and PR stunts. It's not helpful to look at these things as false flags. These are PR stunts. But the visual resemblance of the actor from Megalopolis and Keanu Reeves is undeniable. The rooftop scenes, the black suit, stylistically, this is Neo. Okay, phones are open 505-510-4226. I'm going to scroll through the rest of my notes here. So Trump declared the purge. Looking forward to it. The Drudge Report put this on their cover 2 days ago. Trump goes darker. 35 days to save it. And I noted here the golden hue of his suit. His face is kind of coppery green, bluish. I looked at this and it said, this looks exactly like dead Trump in Beetlejuice. Compare the two. So what is the Drudge Report trying to say here? What are they projecting? Seems like a sick joke. This might be significant. Just the other day, Kamala Harris went on All the Smoke talked about George Floyd with George Floyd's twin. If you recall, George Floyd had a twin, Stephen Jackson. Last person on earth to interview Kobe Bryant. There's some interesting stories with Kobe Bryant where supposedly he had dinner with Heath Ledger to learn how Heath Ledger did the Joker so well. Only the accounts of him meeting Heath Ledger would have taken place 6 months after Ledger had died. So that doesn't make a lot of sense. The Simpsons final episode, I would maintain that's part of the Leave the World Behind predictive programming. The final episode of Friends being one of the major parts of it. Okay, I got a comment from somebody, from Think True on my BitChute video. He said, "You cannot intelligently believe in a flat earth outside the acceptance of the biblical model, or else you're left finding another explanation for its origin. The Big Bang fraud falls flat. Basic physics denies the possibility of spontaneous generation from nothing, so you cannot logically begin with any other cause of creation from an omnipotent creator." And I think I responded to this one with saying this was an either-or fallacy. Either it must be the Big Bang or the biblical flat earth. Sorry, it doesn't work that way. It could be A, B, C, D, E. I do agree with him, though, that you cannot intelligently believe in a flat earth model. The flat earth model isn't based on more intelligence or information. It's speculation. There isn't a model in that sense. Infinite Plane Radio.
Hey, dude, this is Jurassic Liars.
Hey, what's up? Did you hear what I said about this movie Megalopolis having Elvis singing America the Beautiful?
Yeah, I heard you say it, but I don't know what the movie's about or nothing. I didn't see it.
Okay, it's by the guy who directed The Godfather, Francis Ford Copolla. And there's a scene where the main character, Caesar, gets a head wound, his right eye, and he resurrects. And then they're at a celebration for Saturnalia. And I have it on my screen here, Elvis is at Saturnalia, and he's singing the song that was performed at Trump's inauguration, America the Beautiful. So within, it's proximal, and it's in that order. The head wound, and then the appearance of Elvis on Saturnalia singing a...
They actually show Elvis?
Yeah, it's an Elvis, an older Elvis. Yeah, Elvis is performing, so... And he's wrapped in an American flag, singing the Trump inauguration. So
yeah, that's Trump. Yeah, that's funny. Yeah, that's good. So you're saying that they're saying it's Trump?
Well, it's just like the movie's kind of incoherent. It's like a collage of scenes in some instances. But on the one hand, the protagonist, Caesar, takes a bullet to his right eye, and then his eye is healed with this technology he has. Then they cut to this Christmas celebration, which it's Rome over America, so it's Saturnalia instead of Christmas. And then they have this old, aged Elvis-looking person, like an Elvis impersonator, singing America the Beautiful, holding a flag. And America the Beautiful was the one performed at Trump's inauguration. So you have the head wound, the Trump thing, and this is all against the backdrop of a 9/11 happening in New York.
And the flag represents Trump. His Flag Day is Trump's birthday.
Okay, that's good too. The Flag Day connection, and then the satellite that falls. There's references of possibly nuclear disaster kind of insinuated here. So you tie these things together. You have a 9/11ing of New York, which could be a leveling of Seattle. It's interchangeable at this point. Followed by the head wound, the recovery, and then Elvis makes his appearance, wrapped in a flag, singing Trump's inauguration tune.
What did you say fell? You said something fell.
A satellite, a Russian satellite.
Oh, the satellite. Okay. Anyway, I called in because I heard you mention something about 72 seconds.
Yes. So the main character in this movie looks like Neo from the Matrix, and it's got Morpheus, Lawrence Fishburne, as his driver. So you have these obvious Matrix references throughout it. And I brought up how in the Matrix, Neo, the one, dies for 72 seconds, which corresponds to 72 hours or 3 days. And in this movie, before he's shot, the guy who hires the assassin says, "I'll see you in 3 days."
Wow. So did they tell you that he was 72 seconds that he was dead?
In the Matrix, I think they even say it.
Oh, really? Okay. The reason I'm bringing this up is because first, let me just tell you this before I tell you what the 72-second connection is. There was a channel that I actually showed. I did a video showing, because this guy was like some kind of Q crap. All right, but his name on Twitter was 72 seconds, and he had Elvis's image. But the whole channel was talking about the things that I was talking about, and he made his channel after I started talking about it, and he had like 100,000 subscribers, and now he's gone off the internet. He left, and his name was 72 seconds 55 true for you. If you want to check that, you can look it up. It'll say something like, "Oh, this guy left the internet for some reason." Anyway, he was talking about Elvis coming back, and that Elvis he's going to be revealing himself. I mean, it was just a weird, and they were talking about Trump. The whole thing was about Trump and Elvis.
What the hell? I've not heard of this before. I'm looking it up though. But like, okay, so the thing is, okay, this movie, not only do you have this Neo connection, but it was originally going to be put out before 9/11, and the director put a hold on it because of 9/11, because the movie seems very 9/11-y throughout it. But what's more, they include scenes from Ground Zero. So this movie is deliberately connecting 9/11 in this subtext, which automatically makes sense of the involvement of Trump. Because he's.
So were you able to find where it says 72 seconds, 55 true for you? Like, did you see where it says somebody says he left the internet?
Yeah, I found it. It says he went away, not sure, but we hope he will return. I found it on X. I found a mention of this person called 72 Seconds.
Right, and he had an image of Elvis and something else. Anyway, I did a whole video on it, and I showed how they were shown, but I'm not sure if it was on my old channel that got terminated or not, or on this one. I don't remember now. But can I just tell you now what the 72 seconds connection is?
Yeah, and really quick, it says here, "Truth is like the sun. You can shut it out for a time, but it ain't going away." That's a quote by Elvis.
Oh, so it shows a quote that he made?
Yes.
About Elvis? Oh, wow.
I
Okay.
see him here, but yeah, go on.
Yeah. So the 72-second connection, look up how long the wow signal was.
Now, I remember the wow signal was from 1977, August 15th. Okay, so the wow signal, and I recall hearing about this. If you want to give somebody a synopsis on it, I'm guessing it's...
I will.
Okay, August 15th, 1977, Ohio State University's Big Ear, searching for UFOs, heard a sequence, and they wrote wow beside it, so they call it the wow signal, and it was 72 seconds. During which,
yep.
Okay, and this was the night before Elvis dies.
Yes. Now, you ready for the synopsis on this?
Yes.
Okay, so you have the fact, it's called the Big Ear telescope. Trump gets his ear wound, right?
Right.
And it was in Ohio where the wow signal came from. I mean, where they detected it from this radio telescope crap, okay? And it happened 2 hours, like a couple hours before Elvis's death. Like literally, it was 10. I believe it was 10:22 when it happened, the actual time. And Elvis died sometime in the morning on August 16th. He died at like 12 after 12 a.m. supposedly. So, but they pronounced his death at 3:30 in the afternoon. But supposedly he died sometime in the morning, after he went to the bathroom at 12 a.m. or something. But anyway, so he dies two hours after this wow signal that they detected from space. Okay, of course, it's a bunch of nonsense, but they made a huge big deal out of it. And you know that and they always consider Elvis to be some kind of. Hold on one second.
Okay, let me add on to this a little bit here.
Go ahead.
Because
Go ahead.
this ties into Starman. Okay, so Starman is the David Bowie who has Elvis's birthday. It's the David Bowie character that was prophesied in the 1972 album that in 5 years, the song 5 years, Starman would come to save us. So the Starman, anagram for Mr. Satan. You have Starman with Elon Musk, who sends a David Bowie effigy into space. But it's the rock star man, which, again, Elvis and Bowie are synonymous in terms of the symbolism. But the symbol here is the rock star. You know, a rock star is like a falling star. It's light,
Right.
and then it becomes matter. And he represents the fallen angel in the sense, incarnated. But I think the other link here is that Elvis is known for the Elvis from from Hawaii, where he had in 1973 like 1 billion people watching this. So it's beamed from space. So Elvis is beamed from space in 1973, and I think that
Right.
this is an analogous ritual to the Starman in space that they did, where it was this guy in the car in space. But I think the symbol here,
Yeah.
it's this idea, of
Right.
course, of the star, the falling star.
Right. They consider Elvis is like a super being to them. He's from outer. That's what they consider him, being some kind of outer space creature. You know what I mean? So that's what the whole thing is. The fact that it's the big ear telescopes. And by the way, let me just tell you something. On my channel, I literally in front of it was a live show. I looked up the address of this place. Now wait, they changed the address. Because I showed it in front of everybody. I said, what is the address for the University of Ohio radio telescope? And they gave me the address, but now it's different. But I'm just letting you know that day they showed the address of 611, but they changed it. Now it doesn't say 611 anymore. So it's either it was a Mandela effect, or it was just me misremembering, or they did change it, and they do change stuff. You know that, right? On Google.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, everything can be somewhat malleable. You just have to use the Wayback Machine. But it wouldn't surprise me at all because it's very consistent all around. The timing of it, the 72 seconds preceding this death, and of course the code there, it's all implied.
Oh, I hope somebody does a way back on that, if they could find it on that, to see if the address was 611 for that Ohio University, whatever that radio telescope crap, big ear.
Right. I'll take a look. I'll take a look into it to see. But
yeah.
So the Ohio State University Radio Observatory, and again the WOW signal, extraterrestrial, 72 seconds.
Yeah, I mean, and you know, 72 connects to the 666 because 66 plus 6 is 72, right?
I see. Well, right now it has it at Sandusky Street, 75 Sandusky Street. But I want to point this out too. If I had never looked into any of this stuff, that movie would have made 0 sense. The I wound, the Trump thing, I mean the Elvis thing, it would have seemed weirdly out of place. And it still seems to be weirdly out of place. It's like, why would that even be there if it wasn't part of this underlying story? It's the most random thing in the world.
Yeah, can I just say, one of your viewers said something about Ohio being a slang term for some generation alpha. I don't know what that means. If somebody wants to explain what that is, that's fine. Yeah, I've heard about the Kent State. Someone was saying something about Kent State. You remember that shooting that they did a song about? Yes. I Hate Mondays or something. Wasn't that the song?
Oh, yeah. I Hate Mondays was about that girl, the first female mass shooter or school shooter. But the Kent State was the National Guard shooting protesters.
Oh, okay. So I'm missing it up. So yeah, one of them, I'm getting confused. But yeah, I know the Kent State one. But what was the other one? The I Hate Mondays. So what was that one?
So I Hate Mondays was this. It was by the Boomtown Rats. It's a song that was inspired by a shooter.
Yeah, but where was the shooting? Like where?
Let me take a look here.
I thought there was a connection
Oh
with
yeah, that's
that.
right. Cleveland Elementary School. So this was
There it is.
the
That was the
Cleveland
connection.
connection. So and now it's in San Diego, California, but the name is Cleveland.
Yeah, that was the connection. I knew there was a connection because I talked about it.
Fascinating. Brenda Spencer. I remember reading about this because I was like, "Where's all the female mass shooters?"
What was the date? What was the date?
The date was January 29th, 1979. I'm just
Oh,
thinking,
okay.
if they're going to blame society and gun culture for mass shootings, then both sexes should be equally represented. But yet it's only these like disaffected, male bowl cut shooters who are incels. And so finally, recently, we've had some diversity among our school shooting demographics, but still, women step up. You're out. This is just contradictory. It suggests too that they want to associate guns with toxic masculinity.
Yeah. Well, your viewers are actually making good comments today. For once, they're not sitting there, yelling and screaming at me.
Oh look, the
Anyway,
WoW signal was detected. Guess what time it was detected?
oh yeah, I saw that. Somebody said 2:16 Eastern time. Yeah.
That's interesting. Okay,
Which
Girl
yeah.
says Colonel Tom Parker ran the Elvis Roadshow. So Tom Parker was played by Tom Hanks, and in Forrest Gump, Tom Hanks taught Elvis how to dance, if you recall. So I think that's kind of weird.
Yeah. Well, everything to do with Tom Hanks has to do with Elvis. I've talked about that many times. And besides the Forrest Gump stuff, but the Castaway is a really good one, the Elvis connection, because not only did they have an empty casket in Castaway, because they thought he was dead, right, in the movie,
Right.
and they have an empty casket and they put Elvis CDs in it.
What?
In his empty casket.
Okay, that's weird. Okay,
Yeah.
that's a clue.
Yeah, and he was, and they had Elvis playing in his when he was in the car and everything. But the big Elvis connection is the fact that it's called Castaway, as if to be tossed out of heaven type of thing. And the very first thing is at a crossroads. You see the FedEx driver at a crossroads at the beginning, or whatever. They were at a crossroads. Then they pull up into some kind of farm that had angel wings as the thing, and man, it's so hard to explain all this. But the guy, FedEx driver, is delivering something. He's picking up some kind of package, and he's playing when he goes inside the person's barn to pick it up, whatever it is. The person's making angel wings, and you have Elvis in the background playing.
I see. And it says here on the plane ride home, he's offered a Dr. Pepper, and he's told, at your funeral, people put Elvis CDs in your coffin.
Yeah. So it's empty. They're saying Elvis lives, and empty. And I told you that he went from Memphis. He was born in Tupelo, Mississippi, which is TM, the initial, which is 33 T&M. And then he went from TM to MT, Memphis, Tennessee, where he lived and died. So empty. His tomb is empty. Get it? Elvis lives.
Right. Tomb is empty, and that, of course, follows the 72 hours, or the allusion to the 72 hours, the 3 days, where they find out it's empty. Third day he rose. Well, what do you think about Pete Rose dying? Is there a connection there to all of this?
Well, I think the Ohio connection, that was the connection.
Okay. And then, of course, the name
He's from
Rose.
Ohio.
Okay.
Yeah, right. And June, the June flower, you know what the June flower is? You want to look that up?
Okay, yeah, the June flower is the rose.
There you go. And Trump is born in June, right?
Right. And the symbolism is fascinating with the words, because you get rose with multiple meanings. And it's so consistent here. I mean, we can go into the weeds here. One quick thing, the new Marilyn Manson album comes out on 11/22. One Assassination Under God is what it's called. So we kind of brought up the Marilyn Manson stuff just because it seems to be carrying a lot of messaging. But yes,
Right.
1122.
Yeah.
Oh, there,
If people want to watch my video, go ahead.
I was
Go
gonna
ahead.
say, yeah, in this movie, there was one other thing before the Elvis thing. It had to do with twins. There was some kind of twin reference. They did have twin pillars, a dog star reference, pretty blatant at the end, but there was something about twins, and I'll have to get back into the details on this. But I just watched it
Oh,
once.
yeah, I heard you talk about White Noise. Did you see the original White Noise movie? Or was that what it's called, White Noise, the first one?
There was two. There's one. I think it had. Was it Michael Keaton?
Yeah, that one.
I've
Oh man, now I can't remember. There was a movie, something about white noises. There was an Elvis that was in the TV,
Okay.
and it was a demon. You remember
Okay,
that?
okay.
In white.
That's the one. So the new white noise is the train derailment thing. But in 2005, there's a Michael Keaton white noise where they're communicating with the dead and hearing their voices. And there was some kind of a demon. And now that I think about it, I'll have to look it up to see if it was.
There was a guy obsessed with Elvis in it, and he was obsessed with Elvis. There's some kind of doctor, scientist, whatever the hell he was, and all of a sudden Elvis came on the TV, and it was a demon.
Okay.
After Elvis came on.
Here it is. Okay, so you have a professor who has Elvis studies in white noise. So he's obsessed with Elvis. That's right. But he's also communicating with the dead, catching their voices. It says here, yeah, they're examining the death. This is fascinating. This is.
And that makes a big deal because the next white noise was Ohio, right?
Yeah, so two white noises. One, a guy who
Yeah.
Elvis studies and communicates with the dead, and then the other one takes place in East Palestine, Ohio, 42 miles from where Trump was shot.
There you go. See, it's all connected. You see. And before I go, man, I just got to. If you have anything else, go ahead and say it because I have one last thing to talk to you about. Is this American picker that died? You haven't seen what I found on that, have you?
No, why don't you fill me in?
All right. So you know who this American Pickers show is?
I never watched the antique show, but he died at 60. Frank Fritz.
Frank Fritz, right. And Frank Fritz, he was the one guy. Then you have the other guy whose name is Mike Wolf. They were the two main guys when it first started. They were the two guys that would go around all the time. And the American Pickers. And American Pickers is AP, which is 116. Okay, let's start with the more simple stuff. AP is 116, the letters, right? And that's 611 backwards, kind of, right? And 1 plus 16 is 17. In Ohio is the 17th state. So you got these two connections already with the 611, and then you have the 17th state connection with Ohio being Trump, where Trump is in heaven on August 4th. But look, Frank Fritz, FF is 66. The word twin equals 66. He was born on 10/11, which is Trump's father's birthday, 10/11. And from 10/11 to Trump's birthday, 6/14, is 8 months, 4 days. Okay? I'm getting to the big reveal. So, and 10 hours, 11 minutes is 611 minutes. Okay? And there's much more if you saw my last video, but you'd have to wait like an hour and a half before you finally get to the info. But what's the big reveal is, man, I know there was another connection. He's not from Ohio, is he?
Frank Fritz is an Iowa native, says here.
Okay, so it wasn't that one. There was one other connection, I can't remember. But you look when Mike Wolf was born.
Okay, and Mike Wolf is the other guy on the show.
Right.
So let's take a look here. Mike Wolf, 6'11", 1964.
Yeah, you see?
Okay.
You see?
Yes.
And yeah, and it was an unexpected death. I'm just saying, to me, people said he was sick, but I don't know, who knows if it's true or not. But it's just funny that he died, and the big connection was, I had done a video on that on the show when they showed Elvis. They found an Elvis jacket with the flaming star on it, which is the Black Star connection. And that same episode, they found a devil's face on a VW. and VW is 45, the initials. It was a VW hood that was somebody made into a devil. You can actually look it up. It's called Devil's Head VW, American Pickers.
So you have a devil connection. I see it here. I'm looking at it. Same episode. They find one of Elvis's jackets, and then they got
Right.
this big,
Flaming Stone.
scary. What is this thing? This is this like
Yeah.
gigantic.
It's a VW hood. It's a
Okay.
VW hood, yeah.
So you can put that on
And
your.
VW equals 45. You know what I mean? Connecting to Trump, right? Being the 45th president. But anyway, the whole thing is the whole connection is the fact that the AP is the 116 American Pickers, you know, AP. And, you know, listen.
Yeah,
I know
116 AP, Trump. I
Right.
mean, Elvis's jacket, and in the same episode, they
Yeah,
find
the
the devil's
devil's
head,
head.
and then his
Right.
co-star has the birth date of
June
6/11.
11th. Right. And even his birthday is a big deal. I'm saying the guy who died. So I know I can't listen. When explaining it, it doesn't sound as good unless you see it on paper, you know. But yeah, because I'm not into every death being a ritual. You know that, right? And I'm not into that.
No, but the thing is,
Right.
here's what is worth pointing out is that one of the ways they build our worldview is what they selectively focus on, and they ignore dozens of significant deaths every day to the exclusion of ones that are part of their bigger narrative. And one of the ways they communicate and advance their story is with symbolic death and birth dates, which makes a lot of sense because the entire framework for their cult is a precise alignment with the astronomical and the astrological. So these are all significant. Like we mentioned David Bowie, Elvis's birthday, his album Black Star, and all this stuff. Like I'm pretty sure that David Bowie didn't really die of cancer at 69. I think that the 69 is the astrological symbol of the sign of Cancer, which has to do with the summer solstice, so that they have these ways of presenting their coded messaging alongside the seemingly mundane reportage of a death. So I'm with you on this. Not every death is necessarily part of this, but if they put their focus on it, there's probably a reason.
Yeah, but I'm just saying you should really watch that white noise Elvis stuff right there and show that to your viewers. It's really creepy. That part where they show him on the TV screen, inside the TV. So there's a couple scenes with Elvis in there. So watch the white noise old one if you can, and play it for your viewers if you can. And I'll let you go because I know you got other things to talk about.
Yeah,
So
I'm gonna try to find that clip because I remember I watched that movie, and I walked out of it sort of disturbed. I felt kind of bad because I think I watched it with my parents, and I'm like, what am I doing bringing my parents to such a dark and morbid and sick movie, which had to do with like this serial killer torturing people in order to summon the demons. You could hear them on the radio. The whole thing was just so sick and twisted. But
don't even bother watching the whole movie. Just watch the Elvis part. That's what I'm saying. I don't remember anything about the movie.
Yeah, I'm gonna find
that.
that part though. I'm looking for it now. So if anyone else can find it too, post a link. But I'm gonna find it. An evil Elvis demon. It's buried in my subconscious because I watched the movie, and I don't think we forget. I don't think we forget anything. I think everything they pump into our heads stays there until they recall it later. Anyway, thanks for the call. Thanks for the information. We'll talk again soon.
All right, bro.
Okay, here we go. I'm looking at a clip from White Noise. And I'm going to see. And we're talking about not the white noise that has the actor from Megalopolis. Now, let me point this out, too. When I broke down White Noise and the mushroom cloud, East Palestine, and the shutting down of the communication, the nuke, the darkness, I had already said this is a movie about the Tower of Babel falling, about America falling, the West sinking. And this whole theme was reiterated in Leave the World Behind. But it makes even more sense to me now that the same actor from Megalopolis, about the fall of the Tower of Babel, the 9/11ing of the world, would be in White Noise. This actor having a commensurate similar role. This is another example of how you can correlate the metascript and its actors conveying similar messaging with every single role they play. Now, Michael Keaton, by the way, Michael Keaton is also connected to the underworld and the death aspect of, the transition from life into death in Beetlejuice. So that's why it's kind of interesting too that he would be in the movie White Noise about communicating with the dead. Now, I'm looking for clips on that movie White Noise from 2005. It might be a little difficult to find because it's drowned out by the more recent movies. So if anyone can take a look, we're trying to find the evil Elvis demon screaming at us through the TV screen from 2005's White Noise. Now, this also is interesting to note that Michael Keaton is Beetlejuice in the movie where dead Elvis appeared. Beetlejuice. Elephant Tusk says, October just started. We already have multiple disasters, edge of World War III, and a new virus emerging. Yes, they're going to crank it up as we get closer to the election, so people are more desperate to get the right person in charge to fix it. And if they don't get their person, they're probably going to rebel. And we're going to live through the movie Civil War, which is a terrible movie. So the psyops that they're going to give us are going to be probably even worse. And if it's any predictor of what a civil war would look like, we're going to be at home. The only people who are aware of a war going on are going to be those watching it on the internet. Like, I'm thinking back to 2020, how very few people in my circle of friends and family had any idea of the rioting, the police precincts burning, Chazistan, people being pulled from their cars, kicked in the head, freeways being shut down, the arson, the looting. Very few people that I know even noticed any of that was happening because they weren't watching it compulsively. We lived in two different worlds. And in the movie Civil War, they make the point that most of the people aren't even paying attention to the war. It's optional, which also makes me think about Leave the World Behind, how at the whole point of the movie is that Rose had to go into the bunker, and then the nukes go off. Rose, of course, is called Donnie Darko, but Leave the World Behind happens to be a perfect anagram for Behold the End War Live. Okay, let's see. I have not found the clip yet, but if somebody can find it, I'll try to get back to it. We're looking for a clip from the 2005 White Noise with Evil Elvis. Bach Precision says, Beetlejuice is an Arabic word, by the way. And it's a star in Osiris's belt, Orion Osiris. Slick Rick says, I read a comment today saying Elton John is playing Tim Walsh. No way. I mean, maybe Elton John could portray A.G. Barr, but there's no way that he could be playing Tim Walsh. I saw someone else saying Tim Walsh was Al Gore. No, Walsh is Walsh. I don't think it's a different actor. Till says Michael Keaton was Batman and fought the Joker. Yes. Yeah, so he's Batman, fought the Joker, Beetlejuice. I brought that up because he has the green hair like the Joker, and Joker 2 comes out, and the last shooter, Joker connections throughout. And then a dead Trump in the Beetlejuice movie. Oh, nice. Vibe Rock says, Halloween falls on Friday the 13th this year. Wonder what they have planned for us. Elephant Tusk says, Gurdjieff said that we're food for the moon. The moon is man's big enemy. We serve the moon. You know, I've heard that before, that our realm is a projected simulation from Saturn, and that our life force emanates from the sun, and we incarnate on the earth, and then we're vacuumed up, our souls are harvested by the moon, and that there's a cycle here, and if you don't escape the cycle, you have to be repeatedly incarnated, going through the whole process, birth, death, begin again, with amnesic walls between, like we're stuck in some kind of, endless loop. I don't know if that's true, although it makes some level of sense. Corvus says, another year of radical leftists pushing their agenda during Halloween with their aliens. Yeah, okay. I'm with you on this. The Joker movie preceded left-wing uprising. The Joker symbolizes the underclass, the poor. That's why he does his killing of the rich in the subway. The subway represents the underclass, the underserved, those who fell through the cracks, the victims of society, the non-privileged. In the Marxist class warfare framework, Joker is a Marxist class warrior. He's an anti-hero. So he's a villain, but he's a hero. He's a villain if you're on the wrong side of this ideological divide. As Joker Heath Ledger said, Gotham deserves a better class of criminal as he burns his share of the money. So he's burning a pyramid of money because he's not in it for the money. It's the Marxist class warfare superimposed onto this thing. That's where Joker comes from. And 2020 followed Joker's masked riot, his uprising, and the riots that we saw mirrored that. Then you had the Batman movie come out, and we had more or less the rise of extreme MAGA, the MAGA ban. We haven't had any mass MAGA terror attack or anything like that yet, but they've been setting the stage for it. We had the advent of Disease X, Musk taking over X, building this presence. So the Batman represents the other side, the Patriot Front, the Proud Boys, the domestic violent extremists. So Batman and Joker are two poles here, and they do correspond to the Masonic poles, the black and the white poles in the Masonic Lodge furniture. And the names of the poles, let's just take a look at the High Priestess. If you look at the High Priestess card in the Tarot, it gives this one away. You have the black and white pillar, and again, this is part of Lodge furnishings. Represents the pillars outside of King Solomon's temple. But the B and the J, the duality, which is also implied by the tile floors that are always black and white checker. Well, B, Batman, J, Joker, Boaz, Jacob. And the name Jacob sounds like Joachim, or it looks like it's spelled the same. It's Woachim. That's the name of the Masonic pillar. And then you replace the CH with a Q, and you get Joaquin. And of course, he plays Joker with the white face paint. So the black and the white, Batman with the black mask, they represent these poles, the extremes, the dialectics that they use to manipulate the masses. They embody these things. Now, the reason why I say Joker represents the left, and the same thing for Frank James or the Riddler, is they represent this, and this is why the subway's tied into it. The whole theme was kill the rich. Joker is a victim of society. He doesn't have the privilege of the Batman who's got all the wealth, but he's on the ground sleeping. The newspaper says kill the rich. He kills some rich guys, becomes a hero. So the destruction of the money, the killing of the rich, the mob uprising, fighting the cops, he's definitively on the left. And Batman has been associated with the right in many ways, including the whole QAnon movement and the association of Trump with Batman. The Joker also represents the chaos agents, like Joker Sarnoff, Boston bombing. You know, they have that, was it Tax Day? But the Boston bomber was called the Joker. So Joker represents chaos, Batman represents order in this sense. Elephant Tusk says, I went to Costco and I can confirm the masked zombies were hoarding toilet paper. It was Kirkland, Costco's brand. They're talking about the port strike. Yeah, I noticed that the crisis actors on X are saying that the longshoremen are on strike because they're releasing trafficked children from the big crates. The QAnon movement never went away. They just don't put Q in front of all of their ramblings and all of their ridiculous prophecies and their lies. Elvita says loaded carts with bleach and cleaning supplies as well. You know, at this point, I don't care. I mean, if they're going to lock us down, just give us stimmy checks so I can pay for Hulu and possibly Stars. I mean, that's what we're going to be doing. We're going to be watching. We're going to be beholding the end war live. Fallout Season 1, Jonathan Nolan's work, who also did Westworld. Westworld has EMP, Space Needles, post-nuke apocalypse, but Fallout ends in Vegas. A Vegas skyline with a Space Needle, all post-nuke. A Boy and His Dog, post-nuke apocalypse, takes place in 2024. It seems like we're getting ready for that. And I happen to think that the riots or the rush for TP was mostly a PR stunt. Like, I think it was a psyop. I think they have agents running in and creating panics. They can create panics about anything. And I think it was a joke by the power elite on us. Like, hey, let's watch them fight over worthless money. Let's watch them as we flush the economy. Let's watch them fight over worthless paper. And so I think the toilet paper represented money. And as our economy was being tanked, and you had this mass transfer of wealth from the bottom up, just soaking it all up, I think it was all just a big joke on us. Now, Eat the Rich. Let me bring this up. So I'm talking about the Joker connection. So 419, Waco, 1.6 million rounds. ATF goes in. Branch Davidian cult burns. Dave Koresh, 33, burns. 419. In retaliation, Timothy McVeigh blows up a building in Oklahoma City. 419. Trump kicks off his campaign in Waco. Waco is ground zero for this anti-government, domestic violent extremist wing of the Republicans, of the right, the far right. This is all a construct anyway. But we're looking at the Burning Man, Dave Koresh, 419. So Trump's on trial, 419, and Maxwell Azarello sets himself on fire outside the courthouse. 419, Maxwell Azarello, 37. Now, he didn't scream. You know why he didn't scream? Because they were using something called Zell gel, which is, I think it's called Zell gel. Yeah, naked burn gel, where they actually burn actors. The making of Game of Thrones, they're not using CGI, but they're using this clear gel that you cover yourself in. You just can't breathe while you're on fire. So they use a naked burn gel. But the connection with this individual and Joker, one, his name, Maxwell Azarello. Azarello's a big name in the whole Batman franchise, one of the writers. But what's more, he was photographed with Newt Gingrich wearing a shirt that says, "Eat the Rich." And it's a Bernie Sanders shirt. So kill the rich, eat the rich. Bernie Sanders, communist, Marxist class warfare. He set himself on fire to protest what he said was fascism. Money, the rich. He said that the rich and the powerful were going to take over the world. That's why he did this. That's why he wrote his manifesto. So again, this places Joker firmly on the left. Marxist class warrior against capitalism, against the rich. Dwayne Abid said, I think Azarello used burn gel, but Aaron Bushnell used CGI. Yeah, and he referenced Bushnell in his manifesto. Elephant Tusk says, you notice how screens like phones and TVs are always fully supplied blue light devices for mind control? Yeah, when I was watching the looting in 2020, I see them running in, the looters, the peaceful protesters, helping themselves to big screen TVs. And it's like you guys might as well be picking up bars and chains. You might as well, because what you're they're not fighting the system. Like, you're not fighting Big Brother by burning stuff down. You're not fighting the system by taking the big screen TVs, because you're inviting more mind control. You're bringing in the mind control infrastructure. You know, like 1984, there's a screen everywhere, total surveillance. Well, it's even worse than that. So you get away with looting and you steal a big TV, you install it in your home, and now what? Well, now you're going deeper into the program, deeper into the grid, deeper into the matrix, further from any possibility of escape. And the fact that somebody would even loot means that they're responding to the mind control. But I think you're right about that. Aaron Bushnell probably did a CGI burn. Also fake. And I mentioned 419, Waco, McVeigh, also a 33-year-old who was killed on 6/11. That's where I got the 6/11 connection that started overlapping with JL's work. It was studying Timothy McVeigh and how 6/11 has been a code on the right for some time. Ephesians 6/11, armor of God, has been a big thing with truthers for like 10 years now. You had Timothy McVeigh, 6/11 execution date, 90 days before 9/11. Then you had in Tim again, another Tim Ballard, Sound of Freedom, big Q movement movie. The QAnoners were really into Sound of Freedom and this guy fighting human traffickers. And one of the children he saves give him this pendant that has a Bible verse that says Tim 6/11. So Tim 6/11, Timothy McVeigh 6/11, it's a reoccurring theme. 11/6 and 6/11 are positively associated with the far right domestic violent extremist narrative. It's just an upside down 9/11. So instead of an external, it's internal. Viberack says, I'm not with right or left, I'm centrist. I would argue against centrism. I would say the best position is to be a conscientious objector and a non-participant. Like, I'm up here in an ivory tower. Left is controlled, right is controlled, but if the centrist position is still operating within the mainstream mediated framework, it's just as lost because it's still subject to all the same psyops. Like, if you believe that the major transformative psychological operations we talk about are objectively real, you're in the box, whether you're left, right, or centrist. The centrist is on the wrong side of the screen. There is no happy middle. I have a chart that explains this. I put it in the Auto Hoax Con #1 with the political horseshoe, where it's pointing out how the political horseshoe is all about containing people in the middle, in a place of apathy, in a place of total subjectivity, and that the only place where one is no longer passive. So in other words, mainstream and alt media are both passive recipients of propaganda. This includes the centrist. The only active, the only truly skeptical position is outside of the box. The left is skeptical of the right. The right is skeptical of the left. The centrist is skeptical of both, but none of them are skeptical of the mainstream mediation at large. So here's the diagram. The world stage, the blue pill dream in the middle. If you try to escape that, you end up in the red pill nightmare universe. If you lean right, if you lean left, you go into wokeism. Wokeism and trutherism are two versions of the same extremes, just left and right. They're both gate-kept. The idea of the political horseshoe is that the fringes resemble each other because it almost goes full circle, but they don't quite touch. They're very close. What's the difference between a Proud Boy and a Soy Boy? Between Antifa and Patriot Front? There is no difference. Same costumes, same masks, same feds playing these roles, same type of instigation. But this is a controlled dialectic, left and right, so the center isn't really outside of that box. Outside of that box is a place where one must recognize that both sides are being played by the same manipulative psyop entertainment complex. Corvus says, Tim, what do you think about nihilism in relation to blue light? I believe it's the leading cause of suicide in the U.S. I haven't heard that, but for decades, people have heard about Project Bluebeam, when they're going to project illusions onto the mass consciousness, like Jesus in the sky, and everybody's going to fall for this big delusion. I think that the truth of it is that what we're really experiencing, that Project Bluebeam has always been more or less the TV, Bluetooth technology, that it's really not about what's projected out there, but projected in there. What are they projecting into your mind? Yes, Copaesthetic says, we're all in the box at some point. You're in the right place to get out of it. Yeah, the thing is, too, nobody's unprogrammed. Everybody's programmed by default. But the deprogramming process requires stepping outside of the political psyop theater. And left and right are made distasteful. So you're like, well, I have a conscience, and I'm not really an agitator, so I like peace. I'm going to be in the middle. And so being in the middle seems more sensible, but I would argue it's a trap. Okay, let's see here. So we started off today mostly talking about Megalopolis, and I'm still waiting to see when one of these more well-known film critics connects this to the Matrix and connects this actor to Neo. Megalopolis, Neo, and Morpheus, because the Lawrence Fishburne interaction with this character, it just seems 100% like it's calling that up. It's making that reference. So again, I think that Megalopolis has a subtext of the Matrix built into it, along with that of Dark City. But it hasn't been brought up yet that I've seen. I'm still looking for it. Lawrence Fishburne and his Morpheus-like role, where instead of breaking down the Matrix, he's breaking down time and time control. And the physical resemblance between the actor Keanu Reeves and Adam Driver, again, not accidental. Okay, here it is. Corvus says, I'm surprised you haven't heard. On April 23rd, Dr. Gonzalez found that nihilism as a philosophy has been pushed by the blue light gods and has been affecting our kind since the birth of... No, I haven't heard of that. That's interesting. I haven't heard about any uptick in suicides or anything like that. Yeah, elephant tusks, I wouldn't be too hypercritical. I remember in about 2010, I lived in a house with other people, and they would have their big screen on, and they're watching the ISS footage. And I saw it, and I was bored by it. I was like, oh, it's neat. They're in space. I didn't think it was all that interesting. And I think now, in retrospect, they make it purposefully boring so you don't engage. But at the time, I was fully immersed in video editing. And I should have seen through it. I should have said, hey, this is fake. Then I believe that mass shooters were caused by secret government projects using mind control, using psychiatrists to program the shooters to do stuff. I thought Adam Lanza was sent by the psychiatrists who programmed him to commit an atrocity, and that it was over saw it was overlooked by some kind of black ops. So I believed that the news was real, but it was worse than people say. I figured 9/11 was some kind of black magic mass sacrifice of 3,000 people. Because I didn't believe the mainstream version. I thought it was darker. So I bought into a worse version of the programming. And then recently, I saw a clownfish the size of a whale that was pulled onto a fishing boat. I thought it was real. I watched the first episode of The Penguin, and I thought that actor had a very unique look. I'd never seen him before. I thought he was perfect for the role. I didn't know that was Colin Farrell in a mask. I didn't know the clownfish was AI generated. So I'm fooled all the time. And the position of deprogrammed is new. You only had the programmed and the programmers. And there's overlapping between the programmers and the programmed because a lot of the programmed become programmers. They reinforce it. The programmers are programmed themselves. They're only let out of the box with regard to whatever psyop they're a part of. As deprogrammed, we're a totally new demographic. We're the first demographic of media critics and observers who recognize that all media is monolithically controlled. There is a world view monopoly. You might consider it the new monotheism, and the mass media, the world state church. And the perspective that acknowledges this acknowledges the role of special effects, PR stunts, psychological operations, what I call the PSYOP entertainment complex. You can forget about the military industrial complex. That's a hoax. It's the hoaxing industrial complex you need to pay attention to, the PSYOP entertainment complex, and how it is in fact monolithic. There is a monopoly on worldview. Fake news is beyond just fake news stories. It's about total worldview fabrication and fake history. Our history is being written for us every single day. They're making history. They're simulating events, and they've created a worldview that we have all internalized, a map of the world that contains superstitions, hyperstitions, lies, propaganda, various augmentations, so that the masses are in a consensus hive mind, a place of agreement that doesn't comport with the real world. And if you point out the discrepancies, you're called a conspiracy theorist. But they don't recognize that there is a model. And then you do have some truthers who find, hey, there's a lot of interesting, weird coincidences between the entertainment, the video games, the books, and future news events. Must be a simulation. So they get the wrong answer, but they're looking in the right direction. Yes, these are strange coincidences. But no, it doesn't mean the world's a simulation. It means your worldview is a simulation. The world is still real and itself. It's something it's tangible, you can verify it. It's not a simulation. It is what it is. But instead of coming to the conclusion that we're being dragged into a simulation mentally, truthers who figure out these glitches are misled to think that the whole thing's a simulation. The Matrix movie is a part of this psyop. The red pill ideology, the whole red pill thing is saying, you're right. The world is a matrix. The world is a simulation. Okay, I'm going through some comments. Yes, the overbeak effect. You know, the astronauts are said to have this thing called the overview effect, where they go so high into space that they see the world in its entirety, and they're no longer concerned with nations and war and disagreement. It says here, when you go that high, you have an increased sense of connection to other people and the earth as a whole. It's a form of transcendence. It's the most transformative and powerful human experience. It says that when they go so high, they see everything at once. It's beyond words. They liken it to Zen Buddhism. So what does this mean? It means that they're no longer stuck in this limited perspective where from the ground you're competing you're competing for limited resources, and you're all very much divided. From up there they can see it's all one complete whole. And this is of course a psyop. It's fake. They don't really have this perspective. And weirdly, they actually have this thing called space buzz, where they can use virtual reality and sensory deprivation to give this experience to children, so they can, in a simulation, fly up above the earth and see the world in its entirety, like seeing the face of God. But the point here is that when you see the world stage as such, you do have a transcendent experience. Like now, from this perspective, since both sides participated in the fakery of 9/11, the fakery of January 6th, the fakery of 2020, the fakery of 20 years of mass shootings and terror attacks, since both sides and all media united is a part of that mass deception, you step outside of it, why would you participate? Why would you take sides? You would see it as a whole. You would see it as a model. So the perspective, I call it the off-world stage perspective, is a perspective that recognizes that we've been living in a model our whole lives. We've been living in a simulation. And as long as you follow the program and believe it literally and trust the screen and don't recognize that they're fabricating our history day by day, as long as that's where you're at, you're in the simulation. You're a synth in Westworld. Okay, Violet Penguin says the Elvis is in White Noise 2, 2007. Okay, White Noise 2. Let me pull that up really quick here. Thanks for the research on that. Okay, White Noise 2. I'll see if I can find this. Elvis is everywhere. Someone is pointing out, oh, it was Zombieland 2, JL had called about, where they find Elvis's Colt 45 that he gave to Richard Nixon. All right, Megalopolis, another movie. I'm going to write a review of it. I'm just going to have to continue to go through my notes. There's quite a lot in it, but it does tie together quite neatly 9/11 and the space-borne Armageddon scenario, the space station falling, whatever it's going to be. They tie that together, and all of this is built upon, I think, the existing narrative of the sinking of the Titanic. But ultimately, Megalopolis is the Tower of Babel falling. That's why the actor is both a representative of Neo, but also, which has 9/11 connections throughout it, but also the white noise connection, which is another analogous theme here. All right, well, we already talked about the crisis actors hyping up the hurricane. I think that's insane that people are getting clicks by making the news worse. Like this guy here with his shades on is going viral, talking about how the longshoremen are on strike because they're liberating the children who are being trafficked in the shipping containers.
About it is that they get tired of hearing children screaming inside the containers. Yeah, you heard that right. The workers are striking, and one of the main reasons is they're tired of hearing humans being shipped over and screaming and banging on the inside of the shipping containers to get out.
No evidence, just word of mouth. So the longshoremen are saving the children, while the Hells Angels are saving the Crips and the Bloods from the Venezuelan gang members. And the White Hats are in the tunnels liberating the children and fighting the CCP armies. All this stuff is going on underground, out of sight, out of mind, but the mainstream won't tell you, so you can rely on X shit posters for your news. Do-it-yourself brainwashing. Looking forward to this movie. In 3 days, I'll go see it. Joker 2, The World is a Stage, because it's Clown World. And I saw the trailer for this, and it does have the scene where Lady Gaga points her finger to her forehead, dressed like Travis Bickle, which cements the connection between Joker and Taxi Driver, and the assassination theme, and Robert De Niro. All very much interconnected. And then here's a screenshot of Elvis in this movie who sings America the Beautiful wrapped in a flag after the scene where that character has the headshot. Right eye. Such a reoccurring theme. Yeah, choose your own brainwashing, choose your own apocalypse, do it yourself, mind control. Okay, I appreciate all the comments. It's been a interesting day. I have a lot of notes to go through still. I'm going to write a more complete review. I'm still looking to find, I haven't found any evidence of any of the critics connecting Neo and Morpheus to Caesar and his driver, and the connections between this and Dark City. I think it tells another story. There's another layer to it that we're getting to. Armin Reed's going to watch Joker 2 tomorrow because he's from the future. All right, let's move on. I'm just catching up. I had a few more notes I wanted to get through. Chartward, Stanley Kubrick's fake death in the 9/11 hoax. I have this bookmarked because the scene at Ground Zero looks exactly like the scene from 2001: A Space Odyssey when they're doing an excavation. Looks exactly like a scene in Megalopolis, which they 100% based on this. Okay, it's out in Portugal already. Cool. Well, I look forward to hearing your thoughts on it. I'll have more to add to this Megalopolis later. I'm going to check out Joker 2. 10/4, highly significant date. Not a coincidence. Lots of anti-flat earthism in the news right now. We talked about that yesterday. Green Bay Packers. Lots of them coming out saying the earth is flat. And I had a comment from some guy on Twitter. He said, these football players with brain damage are on your side. As in, these flat earthers on the football team have brain damage. But to be quite fair about it, flat earthers are a small group, a minority. And to try to say that these guys are particularly damaged or something, that's why they arrived at it, it doesn't explain why the majority of the population who have head injuries aren't flat earthers. The majority of serial killers or criminals and every other demographic you could name that you want to broad brush or use guilt by association have been predominantly globers. Like, this is still a round earth. The worldview is still a ball. So you can't really smear flat earthers as being something particularly repulsive. Like, not really. They haven't started any wars. There haven't been any flat earthers to do like a mass shooting or something. Like, all the bad guys are still on team ball at this point. So guilt by association doesn't really work. If you want to stereotype your typical flat earthers, they're skeptics raising inconvenient questions, and they're really good at memes. And they really aren't convinced by bad evidence. And that's really nothing to be ashamed of. We spent a week debating with some guy who refused to see the pulsing vein on the forehead of an astronaut who turned upside down. And they refused to note that when he was upside down, he had cheekbones and sunken cheeks. And then when he flipped, his face inflated like a tomato, swollen tomato. And his skin went from kind of pale and pockmarked to red. And he looked kind of like Kim Jong-il on the second half of that video. Like, people are denying their own eyes at this point. Did I buy popcorn when watching the Mind Control movie? No, I was too busy. Look, there's nobody in these theaters. It's ridiculous. Nobody goes to the movies anymore. There was actually some people there, and they walked out halfway through. And I kind of understood why. If I didn't have a specific interest in it, if I didn't know that this was just going to contain copious predictive programming, I wouldn't have found it to be that interesting. But knowing what it was for, I made myself, pay attention to it. Okay, this is Fepe Akbar, allergic to bullshit. featuring Lean Dion. We'll continue this conversation in Discord and elsewhere.
With your deception, keep it real, that's a profession. Like the whole world is pretending, found the truth around the penguin. Get a gang on with a blessing, all the other gang are stressing. RPSC on a nesting, only real ones gonna get this. Fake ones don't accept this, they can miss the message. Timbuktu got bodies, yeah, find them in our records. Auto host a message, squad are represented. Killing you with knowledge, yeah, the uppers getting deaded. Oh, you're so effective, cause we're so effective. Let go of your worries, yeah, the whole thing is a setup. We got it and we get it, offering refreshment. Level up your conscience, yeah, it's honestly the essence. This wave is uncontainable, facts are undebatable. You lanes are unrelatable, give a fuck about saving you. We could keep on playing you, you just keep complaining too. Game is unescapable, unless you're with the gang or no.
Messing with the penguin, we're messing with the penguin. Messing with the penguin, 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 fucking with the penguins, yeah, with the penguins. Coming with a vengeance, trying to make you come to your senses. Forget the general consensus, just pay attention. The road to hell is paved with good intentions. I'm clenching, my back wrenching, representing only the most superior, independent media. We got that real shit fucking encyclopedia. We're bringing an end to this mass hysteria. They wanna know why it's so serious, cause you must be delirious. If you're still believing stuff, get a grip and show some evidence for your bold claims. We don't play no games, we stay relentless, exposing those events. Quick, the IPS are making an entrance. Busting doors down, cause now's the time for interventions that I mentioned. We're affecting so many men across the spectrum. We stand out from the crowd, we don't blend in. Steady gaining tremendous momentum. There's nothing close resembling. Check the emblem, it's a penguin, not a gremlin. Just letting you know you're on an infinite plane, it's never bending. We strike like 10 pin, killing all fears and breaking the tension. Got another Hawks army, digging deep in the trenches. Come and join in, be adventurous. Quit being so sensitive, forget the censorship. We ain't telling fibs. Messing with the penguin, we're messing with the penguin.